There is an actual starvation in Gaza, and but the only people it's happening to is apparently the Israeli hostages, who have three more of them have today been released, and the state that they have been released is, as many have already reported, to akin to some of the people who have been released from the concentration camps at the end of World War II, basically in a state of starvation, in a state of absolute being like not even slim. Slim would be sort of undermining, basically looking really bad, looking like just bones and pretty much nothing else. So today we'll cover the hostages that have been released, what has been happening around it, and some of the responses from Israel. We'll have to see if any bigger response comes, but we'll cover at least what we have now. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Today it's looking like it's gonna be just me, but it should be, think I should be able to cover what happened. So, as I've said, three more hostages have been released: Eli Sharabi, Or Levi, and Ohad Ben Ami. Um, Something to say about that is, as always, Hamas has breaking some of the sort of agree upon things. Again, basically, I think the list of or sort of which hostages were to be released. I believe Israel has received it late yet again, as well as uh, I should say it's. I'm glad we have more of the hostages home, but again, we something more. Another thing was breaking again, and it's the fact that Ariel and Kafir Bibas have not been released yet again, which feels makes some people worry about what if they are even alive at this point, as I think from Israel itself, we have at least 34 confirmed dead by the IDF. The Bibas boys are not among them, but if more hostages are released, just a few more, it would also mean that more than half of the hostages that are still kept in Gaza are confirmed to be dead, which and now we're talking about just the confirmed. So when it comes to the full number, more than half might be actually dead. Um, yeah, just to go to the specifics, they've spent 491 days in captivity. Something that's also really sad about this situation is that Sharabi's wife and two teenage daughters who were murdered on October 7th. So Sharabi was told about it by, I believe, his mother and his sister. And from the reports, it sounds like he didn't even know that. So while um, we are all happy that he's home. The fact that he would come home from this, again, terrible situation where he was actually starved. You might have seen the pictures on the thumbnail, or you might have seen pictures reported all around. They look so differently. They've I think one of the family members has even I can cover it here. Also, Levy's wife was also killed on October 7th. One of the hostages' wife, and from the reports, it's unclear so far that if he knew about it. Now. The mother of Benami said she was devastated to see her son look so thin and unwell. Now, quoting her, she said, "He looks terrible. He is 57, but he looks 10 years older. It is so sad for me to see him like this." She said he looked like a skeleton. And yeah, and we as I've said, we've seen or we've heard from Israel sort of commenting that this will not go without some response. We'll talk later about how this response might look, but this should be another reminder of like this is like a terrorist organization that doesn't have any care for any of these people. It doesn't look at them as human. I mean, just to throughout this war, not a single time were any of the hostages sort of allowed to be visited by any sort of international bodies, be it Red Cross or Red Crescent, um, which again is a break of international law, but we only care about the break of international law when Israel does it. We'll go a little bit later also to some of the comments we've seen. We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. Bonnie also says, "Can't imagine what that was like for him." Yeah, I believe families are looking into, as with many of the hostages, they are looking into professional help because something like this is traumatic. Um, Especially being kept by Hamas. We've seen the state they were in, and this is sort of like a, I don't want to say new law because that's almost saying that it's not as big of a deal, but this is like this is like diabolical. Like this is like pure evil what Hamas has been doing, and the fact that again, most likely nothing will come out of it. Basically, no breaking of the deal. Hamas has been continuously breaking the deal since they made it, but uh, yeah, I will continue following it. We also have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Uh, okay, so uh, yeah, we also have the brother of or Levi told Channel 12 that his brother looks very, very thin, and it's indeed very difficult to see him. But he's coming back and he'll recover. Oh, something more I wanted to say on that is I believe many of the hostages that either were rescued from Gaza or were released from Gaza, I believe, are meeting in different groups to sort of because they have sort of shared experiences. But now going into the way they were released, so as you would imagine, it happened as it always happened. They Hamas basically makes a spectacle out of it. A stage was set up in Deir al-Bala, which is one of the cities that is, I think, the least damaged sort of cities or towns in Gaza. So some of the buildings are still standing. They were handed over to Red Cross, and on the stage there was a sign declaring total victory, which is the catchphrase used by Prime Minister Netanyahu throughout the war. Again, sort of like trying to mock it, because Hamas used this as victory. I mean, when the deal was announced, Hamas and Palestinians were celebrating. Palestinians were celebrating with Hamas, which again, if you are still someone who believes that Palestinians do not want Hamas, Palestinians want to get rid of Hamas, the fact that when it was announced that Hamas will stay here, will basically be still in control of Gaza, Palestinians were celebrating that. So much about Hamas and Palestinians being separate. Also during the sort of the release, when there was the stage, they were of course forced to make speeches. The hostages, I mean, which I've seen what they've said, but specifically, I think I was reading about this in Times of Israel, and Times of Israel has decided to not report on what they said, basically calling it a Hamas propaganda and not to be taken as something those hostages actually said. And I think I pretty much will follow follow in the same example, and I won't comment on what the hostages have said. Again, this is the only way to sort of report on any of what Hamas says, any of what um, Hamas forces the hostages to say. This is not the first time they've tried something like this. If some of you remember, I think it was like a few months ago, there was also one hostage that was on camera, basically saying how, well, I won't even report on what he said. Also, I only half remember exactly what he said. But basically, again, making propaganda for making propaganda uh, sorry, for Hamas. Um, and we might actually be getting joined by Razi. It sounds like.
Hey Daniel, yeah, I saw that you were alone. I figured I would join, but continue. I interrupted
Yeah,
mid-sentence.
I was just reminding people of basically, I think like a few months ago, there was another hostage that was basically forced to say things on camera. And similar to that, the three hostages were also forced to say certain things on stage. And it should pretty much be ignored. Anything they say, anything anyone says under duress should be dismissed completely and shouldn't be taken as something like, this is what the hostages have said. So, in that way, it doesn't even make sense to report on it. But Razi, what do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying, and I was uncomfortable even saying this on one of the first episodes we did when the deal was being first put into place and the first hostages were released, that Hamas is intentionally releasing the most photogenic hostages first, the ones that we whose names are kind of more familiar and who are still alive. They're not as part of this deal. They're going to release some bodies. That was obviously not going to happen at the very beginning. It's going to happen towards the end. And with the hostages who were released before today, we know that they were well fed in the days before the release. They were fed, they were taken care of. They wanted them to uh, look as if they had not been suffering. And of course, anybody, as we know, anybody who would support the Palestinians you cannot be anything other than a horrible human being. And if you have seen them post on social media after the first hostages were released, any image they can see that would make the situation look as if the hostages have not been in hell on earth, they would take that opportunity. Today they're going to struggle with that more, and I think it's probably only going to get worse with anybody else who's released. They will be in very bad condition if they are alive.
Yeah, I mean, and many when it comes to propaganda, it requires two people. It requires the people who make the propaganda and the people who eat it up and spread it and help it spread. And we've seen a lot of it in when it comes to, I mean, I've seen it a lot of acts, basically people saying, look, these hostages that are being released, and now we're talking about the few weeks ago because it's hard to make it with this one, these ones. They were saying, look, they are smiling. They look at their captives with sort of like smiles. They are looking good. They are looking clean. And again, you're like eating up like like it's crazy how you're eating up Hamas propaganda, and it is being done on purpose. Because again, imagine making that in any case, like even on the face of it, these are like hostages who have been kept by a terrorist organization for 1.5 year more, 1.5 year almost. And you think they were happy, like that cannot you cannot even hold this like it's impossible to even hold these ideas in your head without an insane amount of evasion.
Yeah,
um,
and it's not about holding these ideas; it's about expressing them. When you see the pro-Hamas side, you see how they go out of their way to say that which is not just not true. I may have made this comparison in the past of these scam texts that you get from supposedly the bank or whoever, and they'll always put a typo or just a random space before a comma or stuff like that to see if you'll buy it. And then if you buy a little bit of bullshit, they'll try to upsell you on a little bit worse bullshit. And we see this, we see this not just with random savages on Twitter. We see this with people like Owen Jones, who we talk about, who said, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, means that there should be a state where everybody lives together in peace and harmony in a democracy and votes for some lovely socialist. I added the last part, but yeah, he was saying that while of course this is a Hamas slogan that absolutely does not mean any bit of that. That this is not what they want. This is not what they do in places where they're in control. This is not in any place something that they say, but it is something that in order to get people to support the those who committed the atrocities on October 7th and live streamed themselves, uh, you need to you need to push that kind of stuff, and you need to push it on those who will buy it. So yeah, it is not about actually um, thinking it. It's about saying it to whoever might buy it.
Yeah, so something I've mentioned earlier. So far, 16 Israeli hostages were released. Now, in the first stage, and five Thai hostages also. So, in the first phase of a deal, 33 children, women, and older men are supposed to be released. Now, at this point, again, 33 children, women, and older men. We've already had the release of the female IDF soldiers, which were supposed to be released later. Today, we had the release of, I think, like young men. I think one of them was in his 30s. So again, breaking it. We still haven't had the release of the baby hostages. Again, another break. And now we have a release of three people who, as you said, are in like a terrible state. Like th- they must have, like, this is like an actual starvation. Like this is not something that happens, with like slight calorie deficits or anything. This requires a continuous like being so malnourished for a long time for something like this to happen, that the question is like what are we going to look at like next week, like uh and what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
and again, the fact that these images are so in your face. I mean, we heard from other hostages released in this deal, in the previous one, in the rescue operation, how they had to steal food, how really this is what they went through, um, and yeah, we've heard about starvation being something that Israel does, and we haven't seen a single image of anybody actually starving. Not that a single image would be proof, but it would be a bit of a stronger case than, a society where everybody has a working phone with a camera and an internet connection, and you can't provide a single image to back up your claim. But yeah, now we see what's really going on. Every and starvation, of course, is one of the many things that Israel is being accused of and Hamas is doing. The very word genocide is what it can be applied here into what Hamas is attempting. Maybe not, fully successfully, but yeah, people try to apply it to Israel, and with starvation, this is not going to get anybody to say that Israel is right if they didn't say it before. This is gonna, at best, I don't know what the Francesca Albanese's of the world will say about this. I don't know how they will spin it. I don't know if they will comment on it. But yeah, I suspect that we'll hear more about this and perhaps talk about it in the coming days.
Yeah, and something more to mention about starvation. Again, starvation, when it comes to like when it becomes a problem in a society or in a certain region, it's not something that you have to go look for one person who is like starving, or look for one person. Like when there is a starvation, that's like a global, or that sort of like that impacts everyone, because starvation happens when there is a lack of food. It's not like there's one or two people who lack food and somehow everybody else is okay. No, it's like a if there wasn't starvation, we would see like dozens, hundreds, or thousands of people at the same time suffering from it. So again, the only starvation we see is with the actual Israeli hostages, because here we see it's three people that we know of so far. As I've said, there is still 73 hostages left of the original 251 abducted. And it is believed IDF has confirmed that at least 34 of them are already dead. Now, this is confirmed. So, in actuality, it might be much more. It might be already more than a half. It might be two-thirds. It might be even more. Now, someone was asking what was the UN reaction. So just jump in a bit forward. I went to check out Antonio Guterres on X, and he hit his recent tweet. The UN is working around the clock to reach Palestinians in need and scale up support. That requires rapid, safe, unimpeded, expanded, and sustained access. I call on member countries, donors, and international community to fully fund humanitarian operations and meet urgent needs. So, as always, no mention of the hostages, no mention of what just happened.
Sorry, this was after the hostages were released and
Uh,
he saw the
this
image.
was I think this was like a day ago, but again, when something like this happens and you're telling me that like what is he like taking a break?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how he tries to spin this because, he might try to spin this as, oh, they were starving because Israel didn't allow humanitarian aid. Because again, these are the first three people in Gaza who we see actually have been starved. Uh, by the way, my connection here is a bit iffy. Let me know if it's too iffy for me to continue. But thank you, Wes, for the super chat. Susie says, I can only assume that Biba's wife and children are no longer alive for them not to be returned yet. Yeah, that has been the assumption for a while. It's look, Hamas, in terms of every aspect of its warfare is very well planned, and as is the psychological warfare, and the only hope I would say there is for them is if there's some sort of psychological warfare of making everybody believe that they're dead, and then saying, "Oh, look how kind we are. We actually kept this woman and her two babies alive for all this time, and you thought we wouldn't, but actually we're really the good guys here." But I don't see that as a likely scenario, and yeah, it's heartbreaking, but we know what Hamas is, and the terrifying thing here is that some people are still not able to take a stand on this, which is clearly the Palestinian cause needs to be destroyed.
We have a super chat from Mary Mary. Thank you so much. A super chat from Wes. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Enric. He says, thank you for continually keeping the truth about the destructive Gazan society visible. Oh, sorry, I can hear myself. Yeah, I mean, something that really sort of stood up to me today, or I think maybe it was yesterday, I was watching sort of my local news podcast, and in that they had like 5 minutes when they covered sort of Trump's view of Gaza and what could happen. And something he has said, which again is like a podcast I really like. Something he has said about Trump's plan is like anybody who even slightly agrees with this is akin to like Nazi or basically like a neo-Nazi. And when I heard that, I really like realized that this is like such a unique thing we are experiencing, where there is like an actual terrorist society, an actual society that is actually wants to wipe out all the Jews, actually has like the Nazi one example of the sort of what Nazis wanted to do, and nobody takes it seriously. Nobody takes it as like a threat. Nobody takes it, and actually, it's from the other side. They view it as like the wanting to wipe out, wanting to find a solution to this attempting of genocide is actually what makes you a Nazi. For you wanting to stop this savagery, for you wanting to stop what's happening in Gaza, that's what makes you a Nazi. And it really made me realize like this is such a like a unique thing that you cannot rely. It's sort of like you cannot rely on like somebody else to come in and save the situation. Like this is rhetoric. Like what we say here is something that needs to be spread, or things are gonna be bad for Israel, for I mean for the world if we like have like an actual evil in front of us and we refuse to like acknowledge it. Um, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. Hopefully the background noise isn't too much. One of the most loyal trolls in the chat says, "Then you had a bunch of Jews blocking aid once." Yeah. So yeah, there was that heroic moment. Not that I necessarily would probably not get along with those people in daily life, but yeah, people said, you know what? These savages who did October 7th and are continuing to fight the war and continuing to do what they're doing to the hostages, we don't want to feed them while they're doing this. We don't want to feed their war effort. And we think this is wrong and we're going to try to stop it. That was a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And unfortunately, not enough Israelis, if those Israelis protesting in effect for Hamas, for Israel capitulating to every Hamas demand, if they had instead all said, we will not allow you to feed the enemy at a time of war, then this would have been over by now because enough people would have been able to stop this. The Israeli army would have had to turn on Israeli citizens in order to and actually fight them in order to feed Hamas, which I don't think would have happened. So yeah, that was a very, very good thing, and unfortunately, there wasn't enough of it.
Yeah,
Susie
just
said, yeah.
so sorry, just to jump in again with the sort of like actual Nazi sympathies in the world. Right now, someone says Hitler wanted ethnic cleansing. Now Netanyahu wants ethnic cleansing. Hitler wanting genocide. Hitler wanted ethnic import. He was importing Jews into Germany so he could massively genocide them in concentration camps. The idea that Hitler just wanted them to get out, no, he tried everything possible he could even before the concentration camps. Again, concentration camps were the final solution because he tried so many before. Like that was basically no, there is no other way. We like uh, like I live in Slovakia. Slovakia was like an actual like Nazi collaboration regime during World War II. We exported our Jews to Germany to be killed. My town was one of the biggest like Jewish towns in like sort of my area. Like more than 50% of that town was Jewish. Now there's not a single like Jew there. There's very little in all of Slovakia because all of them were exported to Germany to be killed. And this idea that anything, even this plan that most likely will not even go through, but even the idea that sort of what might happen in Gaza is anything close to that is like that's the actual like Nazi sympathies.
Yeah, and of course the people claiming this is ethnic cleansing chant in the street that Jews should go back to Poland. So they're not against ethnic cleansing, whatever that means. They are only against people who want to murder Jews being unable to murder Jews. That is what they're against. Thank you, Ideology, for the super chat. Ideology says those released still have their lives, dignity, and a future, unlike the Gazans, the most pathetic people on the planet. Um, I mean, well, the Gazans do have their lives. I don't know about dignity. I don't know about a future. But yeah, they're still alive and well in a context in the context of they should not be as well off as they currently are, considering what they did, and the fact that they are is something that I think Israel is paying for and will continue to pay for. So earlier, Susie says, do we even know who had the Bibas children and mother, civilians, Islamic Jihad? I think it was supposedly Islamic Jihad, but again, that very well could be civilians, as is in the case of many of the hostages. It's civilians, it's UNRWA or UNRWA facilities. It's all those people that we keep hearing that at any time Israel acts militarily against them, it's committing war crimes. Those are the people who are starting and continuing the war, and every aspect of this war that made it start and makes it continue is coming from those people who are supposed. Remember, there were no Hamas for over a year. Like we now in the hostage deal, we see Hamas in uniform. They were all civilians for the past year plus. Those uniforms only came out recently. So, in that sense, yeah, everybody is a civilian, which is why um, people who say civilians should be avoided, certainly in this war, is saying Israel should avoid defending its citizens.
Yeah, and to go to responses from Israel, so one, the Israel's coordinator for missing and captive persons said the disturbing images from their release will not go unanswered. Israel takes Hamas's repeated violations of the agreement very seriously, and appropriate actions will be taken. Uh, the shocking sights we witnessed today touch us all and add the painful memory of October 7th, 2023. Now, he goes on, but again, like, this is not the first time Hamas has violated the deal. This is not the first time, even like, violated the deal ever. They violated past ceasefire deals. They violated this deal. They violated like every week. Every week we get the Hamas is supposed to provide the list. Originally, it provided the list late. Now it's supposed to also provide who are they going to release. They are doing that late every week, like on purpose, most likely. Like they keep violating, and what's gonna happen? I mean, starting next week, the negotiations for the second stage are supposed to start. Now, I think I've read that most Israelis actually do want the second stage of the deal, and obviously after seeing the state that the hostages are being released, it's understandable to some extent. Uh, but again, what's gonna happen? What will we see? Like, will we finally see recognition that like Hamas is fundamentally a problem, and the Palestinians people who like support this? Do you think when these three hostages were released in the state that they were, do you think there was a single Palestinian who said like, no, this is going too far? Like, I understand we have to like fight Israelis because whatever, but like we shouldn't do this. Like, there is not a single one. They want them gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, we've said what we think about the deal, and yeah, there are things in the world that we oppose and yet happen, and this deal is one of them. And so my hope within what I think is realistic to hope for, as in things that Israel might do, is this deal continues for however long Hamas decides that it will continue for, and then whenever it ends, whether it's at the end of the first stage, whether there's a second stage and Israel capitulates to more demands and gets more hostages released, whenever it is, that the one thing Israel doesn't stick by is the permanent ceasefire, as in, we're not going to go back to fighting until Hamas starts the next round, whenever that is. I hope that once it's over, and there is more reason to hope now, I think, than there was before October 7th. Israel has changed in the right direction, just nowhere near enough. And yeah, I hope all of this will not be forgotten, because things are forgotten quickly in Israel as well. I hope it's not going to be forgotten. I hope Israel goes back to fighting whenever the deal is over, and hopefully fights more stronger than before, and hopefully attempts to whatever extent it can to bring as much of this Trump plan as possible into fruition, and makes the situation with Gaza not as bad, because it won't be fully implemented, or I'd be very surprised if it is, and Israel will still have this problem on its hands, but yeah, hopefully it'll be at least diminished a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just something to mention about the deal. I mean, if it sort of goes forward, I believe Smotrich has said that unless fighting resumes, he is quitting the government. Uh, Now, that would mean the government would most likely fall unless Netanyahu got some of the votes from the opposition, which I believe Yair Lapid has pretty much promised to support in sort of to basically make sure this deal goes through. Now, even if this deal goes through, that pretty much means the fall of Netanyahu's government, because it's not like Netanyahu will like I think he's supposed to be a prime minister for like 2 years or something before next election has to be called, and it's not like he's gonna like stay in like a coalition with sort of his current opposition. So it would most likely fall. So
I don't know. There's a question there of what it means when Lapid says, they will support the government from the outside. They can, in the sense that if there's a no confidence vote, they abstain or whatever. Then a no confidence vote needs 61 people voting for it out of the 120 members of the Knesset for it to pass. So yeah, if Netanyahu has a minority government, but it's it's uh, it's only Smotrich who leaves, then Lapid can provide that, but is it just until the hostage deal is fully implemented? I would be very surprised if there's some sort of agreement that lets Netanyahu coast all the way into the next election, when Lapid's entire political career for a decade or so at least has been Netanyahu is the worst thing in history and we need to get rid of him. It'll be very, very difficult, I think, for him to sell that and then run in an election as a potential alternative to Netanyahu. So, yeah, but Netanyahu has in the past, where possible, leaned on the left, and I definitely wouldn't put it past him. He's not a principled leader, but yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see how many of these people actually do what they say, and uh, in Smotrich's case, I think he will, because again, for electoral reasons, he would have to not be in a government that allows the Palestinians to get away with it even more than they're already getting away with it.
yeah, all right. Anything else to bring up?
No, I mean, look, it's we are talking about a war. There are days when it's very depressing, and this is one of those days. But it's depressing, but it's not surprising. And yeah, I just hope in the longer run, the right things will be done, and to whatever extent, you know, Israel can. I wouldn't say rely on America at the moment, but certainly, we've seen worse. As very recently we saw worse. I hope Israel pushes as much as it can to make the situation uh, long term much better than it currently is, because these images, if nothing else, should tell people what it means to allow Palestinianism to continue to fester on Israel's borders.
And with that, we'll continue following this. There's many things still happening, as well as there is still the supposed plan for Gaza. We'll see where that will go. Um, but until then, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective. Thank you, Razi, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.